Hello, listeners. Welcome to Syntax Error. Bioshock, a game in which I appear by the sweat of my own brow. We're here tonight to ask, would you kindly join us now in Rapture? Is it not the greatest game ever made? A man says yes, a parasite nitpicks.
Thank you, Andrew Ryan. I am Scott Thurlow, of course, and I am joined tonight by Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Hello, and would you kindly listen to our podcast?
Yes, Christopher Morgan.
Hello.
And Stephen Amosi.
Hello.
And as you may have gathered, we'll be discussing Bioshock, sort of breaking it down. Some listeners may have caught our Rapture edition where we discussed it via Christian mythology, a very narrow range. Now we're going to just do more of a broad analysis of the game and our opinions and impressions and the legacy of it, if you will. So I will begin by asking everyone here. Let's start with Steve first. What is your broad overview opinion of Bioshock and where it stands in the canon of games, the catalog of all video games ever made?
As far as a narrative experience, I think that Bioshock stands pretty tall on the list, and was one of the first games that really took narrative in games above and beyond what they'd done before. On top of that, for the time, it was a great visual and gameplay experience as well. So that being said, obviously I really like the game, and I'm going to turn it over to Ian on that note.
I played it back in the day for the Xbox 360.
Yes.
And I just played it recently again on the
PlayStation 3.
PlayStation 3.
Quick disclosure, sorry, we all played it recently again for this episode.
Yeah.
Go on.
And I think it's in a sense, the natural successor to the Half-Life series, where Half-Life brought first-person shooters to a new level. Bioshock continued that and really became kind of the cornerstone narrative in games. Granted, if you can go back to like the System Shocks.
Definitely, sure. We'll talk about that in a sec.
But I think it really kind of... It has the ranking it does for a reason. Mm-hmm. It's one of the iconic experiences in gaming.
Well put.
And I think it deservedly so. Chris?
It's kind of a nostalgic thing for me, because as I said before in other podcasts, that I'm fairly new, I was fairly new to the new way of gaming, anything that came out of the late 90s to early 2000s. So when I met my wife, I moved in. She had an Xbox 360, and she came home one day. Scott had been telling me all about it at work for like months, and she just comes home one day out of the blue and says like, "Hey, I picked this up for you. I heard it's a really good game." And it was this, and I played about half of it, stopped, and went back to the beginning because I had to get the mechanics down. You know, this was like a new experience. So when the graphics were like nothing I had seen before. There was so much detail to like everything. I mean, take away the splicers, and it's actually a very tranquil game to play. Until it gets hairy. But sure. I think it's great. I just recently played it. I've got this new high definition television, and
newfangled.
It's like a 52-inch, and the graphics really hold up for the most part.
Important to know for everybody. Yes, go on.
Well, I mean, no, I think it's important that the graphics really do that. They don't degrade, and so, everything about this game, from the mechanics to the story to the graphics, just the way the game plays, it's like near perfection. It really is.
Since you mentioned graphics, I would like to give a bit of a negative to that. At the time, they were phenomenal graphics, and the interior design still holds up. And what I particularly like about the game is that every area makes sense.
Yes. It's a logical layout, if you will.
Absolutely. But the thing is, when they do the broad expanses of Rapture and like the underwater scenes, the graphics are noticeably dated nowadays, but not game breaking at all. So that's my one point.
I was going to say, because I had also played Infinite and Burial at Sea, and when you look at Burial at Sea, and by the way, we're going to spoil the hell out of. When you play Burial at Sea, one of the first things you see is a giant humpback whale passing by.
Right, but I think that's what Ian was talking about.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that when you compare it to like Burial at Sea, yeah, the graphics look dated, but you look at it with fresh eyes. 'Cause I hadn't played it for like 5 years, and it really held up a lot more than I thought it would.
It holds up a lot more than like PS1 games do,
Sure,
or original Xbox games. So that is a bonus to it, but still, it is. I noticed the date.
All right, fair enough. So let me speak about mine a little bit. Sort of same thing, similar to what Chris said. I didn't even own an Xbox 360 yet. One of my roommates did at the time, and one of our friends lent it to us and started playing it. And like you said, I wasn't quite. Yes, I've been a big video gamer, but I wasn't used to the Xbox controls, the controller, and the layout, like the buttons and so forth. So I found like I couldn't get to. I was panicking. I just couldn't. I had to get used to it. So years later, when I bought my own Xbox, maybe a year or two later, I got one for myself, and I'd played enough games at that point that I was very used to it. I was comfortable with it. And Bioshock was one of the games I picked up used. It's probably like $20-$25, whatever. It was the first game I actually bought for myself for having my own system. And I went through it. I'm like, this game is amazing, and we'll get into it soon. Yes, the graphics are great. I think they mostly hold up. I do, to your point, E, earlier, I do see what you mean there. Like, if you mentioned it to me, and I sort of like looked for it. I'm like, yeah, it's a little flat. You can see it's kind of a little odd there. It doesn't quite hold up, but... Mm-hmm.
I don't know the technical term for it, so I apologize, but like it doesn't blend in as well. Like some of the corners are a little like
frayed or whatever. Yeah. I see what you mean.
But it never pixelates. It never.
Sure. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Sure. But all I'm saying, so like when I went through it, I'm like, holy shit! As soon as it was done, I said to myself, this game just raised the bar on video games as a whole, and we're about to tell you why.
Well, when you
at least according to us,
one of the best things, and one of the scenes that I think still holds up, and it's the first scene in the game when you just get dropped in the ocean, then you have to go find your way there.
Yeah.
It's an incredible opening. It's something that I had never really experienced to that extent before. Then just this cold open, like your plane crashes. You're in the water. You don't know what the hell's going on. You just have to find the nearest dry land, basically, and you have to swim through a ring of fire to get there. And that experience, having played it 2 or 3 weeks ago, that experience still holds up. Yeah. Going through the beginning.
It's an arresting opening. Like it gets you right. Like, if we're doing mods to it, like one by one, it may be one of the greatest openings in a game ever because of how effective it is.
To be a parasite for a second.
Yes.
When the plane's being dragged under the water and you're right next to it, wouldn't the force of it being dragged underwater drag you down with it?
Theoretically, yes.
Okay.
Sure.
That's me going
All right,
back
thank
many
you,
years
Captain
later.
Physics. But
great.
I just thought about that briefly as I'm like, wouldn't I be...
Yes.
Game over, that's the entire game.
Yeah,
just
the game over
screen.
You're like, thank you for buying our game. Yeah, that'd be funny. Sure. But we're gonna launch into this, I imagine, in a second. But yeah, I like what you said earlier, that it's sort of like narratively was a spiritual successor to like Half-Life, to something like that. Because yes, the gameplay is fucking solid as hell, great and fun, and also the narrative is just something like it came together in a way you don't see often in video games. And yeah, as I said, it raised the bar.
It gets that immersive game, like it gets that immersive system down.
Yes,
much like Half-Life did. And I think that's probably what you're speaking to the most, like the immersion in the world, and like having a world completely encompass for the hours that you're playing that game, having that world be your world, like it was very rare before that, and before Half-Life even, for a game to do that to me, where like I just don't care about what's going on, or like whether or not I think that this world is believable. I just believe the world,
Yep.
Now, one of the questions I have about this, though, I agree that it was a landmark in console gaming, but I think that there are first-person shooters on the PC prior to Bioshock.
Well, that was Half-Life, really. Like Half-Life was PC only before.
The original Farcry, I never played much of it.
The original Farcry, I think, was Xbox.
I believe
no, but it was PC.
It might have been
first.
Both.
Maybe it was PC first, but I think it was definitely ported.
I believe that it also had that kind of those. It says not to the level that Bioshock
had those elements.
But it had those elements. So you saw them coming up. It's that kind of like if Bioshock never existed, another one would have come up. But I think that it was the one that triumphed.
Well, I think that's the feeling that like all of those story-based first-person games were trying to do. But I think that the ones that really accomplished it, thinking back from that, from the year 98 through 2006 or 7 or whenever Bioshock came out,
it was 2006.
were those two games. Like when I think back, like I played a good amount of first-person shooters.
That's funny. Yeah, name other ones that you remember.
I mean, I played Halo, and like that wasn't the same experience. I played a little bit of Farcry, the first one, and it was good, but it wasn't like the same thing. And, like there were other games like that, but those two succeeded, I think.
What blew me away about this game, and I inherited my brother-in-law's PS2, and I played Silent Hill 3 and Vice City. And then the first the Xbox 360 game that had just come off was the Halo series. And when you get Bioshock, the way it opens, we're talking about an immersive experience. You know, it's first person, and like as soon as you hit the water, there's the water droplets on the lens,
right?
Which it still holds up. You know, it still looks great, but I'd never actually seen that much clarity in a game before, and it really all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit, I'm here.
Well, that's like, you know, that they were not afraid to use cinema devices in a video game, which a lot of other games don't or didn't do, and still don't.
Well,
you know,
not often anymore.
Like when you said the Halo games, like Halo was a video game, before it was a story
that's
vehicle.
true.
And whereas Bioshock was a vehicle for the story, it could have been in any media, really. But the fact that it was a video game gave you all these different choices, which made it that much better. As for the story that they wanted to tell.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Metal Gear Solid 2 came out before Bioshock.
Before.
Yeah.
And that was the one I really remember having the kind of the environmental like effects to it. I remember it being a big deal that you could like shoot the bottles at the bar and stuff like that. So I felt that got. I'm not trying to diminish like. Oh,
it was a progression, but
there are like I think back in the PC games, and you have Doom, you have Wolfenstein 3D, and those games were very much like straight shooters, like with minimum storyline to them. Then you start having the games like Strife, if any of you remember that.
I do remember Strife.
Where it added RPG elements. And I think that these kind of additions of RPG elements really...
it was the evolution almost.
Yeah, and then Bioshock took... kind of almost diminished on the heavy RPG elements and just enough to bring you immersive while keeping the first-person shooter elements.
Metal Gear Solid is a good example because that was one of the founding games that really established the fact that you could use film techniques to in terms of a game, and I consider it an awesome thing for the way that Metal Gear Solid, especially the first one, used it. But also, I think that some games these days go maybe a little bit too far into that and like forget that they're games.
How to
like
use it.
They try to become movies instead of games.
The order was sort of like that. I'll just real quickly. It was you could see they were going overboard with it. Yes.
Using techniques from film and trying to be a film are two very different things. And I think that you can really effectively use techniques.
I think the Uncharted series is great. Although it's not a first-person shooter, it's a movie and then a game second.
Right.
So,
sure.
Getting back to Halo for a second, Halo decided to become cinematic from Halo 2, Halo 3, which is why the story to me is an incoherent mess. It really is. The first game that I played with any real narrative was Dead Rising. And when you get to...
certainly had a narrative.
Yeah. But all right, so say you compare Bioshock. It had its flaws, but...
You played Dead Rising before Bioshock?
Yeah, I played Dead Rising.
Dead Rising was like the first Xbox 360 game.
It's a third person.
One of the very first.
And the story's kind of but like the side missions are great. And so when you get to Bioshock,
so you mean like every zombie game ever? Go on.
Yeah, but when you get to Bioshock and you've got basically a silent protagonist, and you compare it to like even the first Dead Space, which I love. They utilized in Bioshock the first person silent protagonist. More like we were discussing Mad Max. They really used. They really made the most. No, seriously, because there are a couple times when he speaks off camera, but generally for the rest of it, you're not saying anything. But there is a story happening around you. You are integral to the story, and it's
you're way more integral in Bioshock's story than Mad Max is ever integral in his stories. But that's
no. But what I'm saying is, compared to a lot of first-person shooters, even if there was a narrative. They really use the silent protagonist well, is what my point.
We discussed the influences a little bit on Bioshock, but if it's such a transcendent game, what are the games
That were
that spawn
influenced
off of
by
it?
it.
And aside from like Bioshock 2 and Infinite, and I personally feel that Infinite's a much better game than Bioshock is, but no, so what are other games that had that influence?
Okay, that's interesting because they're almost their own thing. Like, because they achieved such a level, it was either people were too scared to try to follow that up in their footsteps, or it wasn't they weren't going to put the concentration into trying to do that because it had become like it very quickly became almost like a cult / indie / critical darling. But rightly so. We're going to lay out reasons why. So it's almost as if you're trying to fill shoes that you cannot fill. In that sense,
that's never stopped anyone.
It
before.
shouldn't stop them. You're right. You should reach for it. I agree with that. I'm trying to answer a question. What games came? Far Cry 3, I think, may be a spiritual successor to having a great narrative and great gameplay married into one, which created for you as a gamer an experience that you would not often get or see, and elevated itself. I count them both in the same category.
I was thinking a lot. Excuse me. I was thinking a lot of elements of Bioshock probably went away from first-person shooter games. So, like, there are games that aren't necessarily like straight-up first-person shooters that have elements of even the Fallout games.
But they're FPS.
They're RPGs, really. Well, like it's not the same. It's not the same kind of game as Bioshock.
You're right. No,
you know what I mean?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But like the Fallout 3 had like these elements of like story that gets a lot deeper than what you kind of expect.
On the surface,
kind of what you expect, and like have these like deeper elements that you really have to search for to get to. And I think that Bioshock did a really good job of making that type of story accessible through a first-person shooter where you're just basically on rails. Like you have one track through the game.
Well, that's the whole point. Which
However,
we'll get to eventually, but
even in that way, the way that they told the story, you could access this whole other level of like thinking on the game. That's a lot harder to do if you have a track that you're on.
Right. Sure.
I was thinking about Bioshock compared to other games, and it seems like Bioshock, I think I nailed it, is that Bioshock, they knew the game they were going to make. So they catered a story around a silent or semi-silent protagonist,
a message that they
as opposed to like a lot of first-person shooters where they have a story and they kind of say we're going to tell it from the first person. I feel like they catered this more to a first-person silent protagonist, and one of the other reasons that was part one of this. Part two is another reason I think Bioshock's hard to emulate is. It's got noir aspects. It's got science fiction aspects.
I like to say it's survival horror, essentially.
It's got some survival horror. It's got steampunk elements, and it seems that a lot of games didn't know where to put themselves, so they either went noir or they went steampunk. And Bioshock just blended everything so well. It's kind of hard to emulate.
So you're saying that Bioshock had more of an impact on narrative in games than it did on gameplay?
Yeah,
aspects?
I agree with that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I'd say more than narrative. I'd say overall aesthetic.
Yeah, it sort of counts as both, but
right.
You
can, that's the thing. Bioshock is one of those games that's in a really original space.
Yeah,
in terms
of
games,
it's well said.
So it's really hard. You can't straight up emulate it, otherwise you're just a Bioshock knockoff. Right. What you have to do is take. And there's other games where you can pretty much straight up emulate what's going on and then put it in a different setting or something, and that's a different. Look at Skyrim and Fallout, both terrific games, but they're very, very similar.
Essentially, it's the same engine, yeah, I guess.
But if you look at things like Silent Hill 2, how many games tried to be Silent Hill 2 after that came out? And
right.
I think maybe the closest one is
Alan Wake, maybe.
No, I never played Alan Wake, but what's the one you played recently?
A horror game.
Yeah.
Res Evil, maybe?
No.
Evil
Deadly
Within.
Premonition.
Yeah, but Evil Within is the guy
Deadly Premonition.
Evil Within is the guy who did Res Evil. Yeah, I guess I get what you're saying, though.
But I feel that captured the spirit most.
Okay.
Even more so than later Silent Hill games.
All right, fair enough.
But again, so if you create such a landmark, people will try to copy it and become Bioshock-like.
Or Half-Life or whatever, yeah.
Right, but I would say that Bioshock is much harder to copy than something that's a straight up horror game or something like that. Like Bioshock has so many elements to it where if you try to copy them and you try to play off of the template that Bioshock used, it's going to be a very obvious thing. Whereas it's fine if it's an obvious horror game because it's just a horror game. It's another horror game. Like, it's not like Silent Hill didn't have its own games before Silent Hill came out that they were obviously riffing off of, But Bioshock was so original in it, and like I said before, it occupied, and it still occupies its own space.
Its own special little arena.
Well,
right, within video games.
To your point, Bioshock 2 was made by different developers.
Yes.
And the only thing they could do with it is kind of copy and paste and add on elements of like that they didn't really, may not have touched upon, but still, in a sense, a clone. So there wasn't much they could go...
In terms of the horror aspects of it, our conversation kind of reminds me of like zombie games, because if you look at a lot of zombie games, Undead Nightmare excluded,
yes.
the main story is usually the weakest part. Like they basically find something serviceable to tell a story, and they really put the effort into the side missions and so forth. So Bioshock, like, I think we're all saying, is definitely telling an original story, and insofar as there's no other side missions, it's concentrating on the main story. And a lot of horror copycats kind of like say, okay, we're giving you a serviceable main story, but we're going to really show our creativity in the side missions and so forth.
Yes.
Would you say that Dead Space is a copycat of Bioshock?
No,
I wouldn't.
it can't be. Like, it just isn't. It's a good survival horror game, but it's not.
I feel it had very similar. Maybe not.
It doesn't have the same. It doesn't have similar themes.
I did not get the sense of that exactly.
But themes and like
Even
again, you're
feels
saying that you can't. But I feel wise. I feel that you're like it says spicers.
Like,
you're fighting the Xeno.
Broadly, I see what you mean. Yes, but I don't. I didn't. When I was playing Dead Space, I did not think to myself, "Oh, it's Bioshock." Like,
I did though.
I felt like Bioshock was a lot more psychological than
that's
Dead Space. Dead Space was more like horror. I think like straight up horror.
monsters.
Yeah, like alien monsters. Whereas I felt like Bioshock was more like the reason that I'm scared of this is because these are people that have had horrible
it's kind of the island of Dr. Moreau.
Right.
Kind of. Yeah. Go ahead.
But it's not that I'm saying trying to compare them narrative-wise. I'm trying to compare it with
Feel like atmospherically.
and I think that I don't like Dead Space, so I feel that they did it poorly. But I feel that it was in a sense maybe influenced.
I didn't think they were like in my mind they were not connected at all. So
I can certainly see the influenced thing. However, I got very different feels from each game, and like even the horror aspects of each. Like I was way more expecting a jump scare out of Dead Space than I was out of Bioshock. Like there were certainly quote unquote jump scares in Bioshock, but
not traditional ones.
But behind every one of those, there was also a story, and
Sure.
whereas Dead Space was just a bunch of aliens jumping out of a damn corner, which isn't bad either, in my opinion. Like I love Doom.
Most of the like kind of jump scares for me in Bioshock were the ghosts that appear throughout. Because it always kind of like not that it was like in a sense even a traditional jump scare.
It was a little bit.
It was
It's
just
more
like
off-putting.
Yes,
kind of,
unsettling.
True.
That's the thing about with Bioshock is it's like when you hear the splicers or these disembodied voices, and it's just it's just like Jesus loves me this I know, and you're like, oh my god,
we see you, monster.
There's a spider slicer around here somewhere, and Dead Space to me was more of an action film. Like I said, the main character was totally silent throughout the whole thing. You were playing more of a foil than you were in Bioshock. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm very fond of the first Dead Space, but if you're going to compare the two, I'd say one's more of a drama first and an action film second, and the other one's definitely an action film first and
well, I didn't compare
with
the
dramatic
two.
aspects.
I didn't compare the two, as I said, but that's where we certainly we can explore that, but.
That's what I was saying was the difference between Bioshock and Dead Space.
I'm going to address something you said.
Yes,
you're so if people you guys can remember this, you do have a name in Bioshock. Your name is Jack Ryan, of course. Like you find that out eventually.
No,
and yes, your name is Jack Ryan. Yes, you're Andrew.
Oh,
Ryan.
You said Bioshock.
It's never like But here's the thing: like you need to be a silent protagonist in order for the entire game to be effective. If Jack Ryan was saying shit in the way that Booker says stuff in Infinite, like I understand what you mean. They're two different like sort of monsters in a sense. They're each effective in their own way, and the reason why the first one is effective is because of the nature and the reveal of the plot. You know what I mean? You have to be silent. That's what they're going for. They set out to achieve like a sort of a message. Not to, like it says something to you about being a gamer and about it requires almost you have to have played a number of games like it to understand what it's really trying to do with gameplay and narrative, both of them. So, but if you do that, if you are a person who can understand that and see it, then that's why, of course, I'm always going to say, and what we may agree somewhat to a certain extent, that's what elevates it above anything that had come before.
But that's what I was saying before about they actually catered a story
Yes.
to that, and you're not just a foil.
My only point was you had to be silent in order for that to be more effective.
Exactly.
I think, Scott, that you brought up an interesting point, and we may be going in circles here at this point on what we're talking about. So maybe we should talk about what you just said about the fact that this brings up
The actual twist, what?
points and interesting things about being a gamer. And I know that you can talk to that for probably hours, but
I'll try to
keep it
condense
short.
but we'll all talk about it. So yeah, of course, like at the end of the day, as we explored various other messages that may or may not have been contained in Bioshock in a previous podcast, but the message that is the most obvious one, as the game itself says to you, really, is you're a slave. And you touched on it earlier. It's FPS essentially on rails, right? Yes, the areas are open and you can explore whatever, but there's no side quests, etc. Like, those kinds of things. You're doing the plot as you are in every, as I just said, many other FPS games that have come before it. But it's a meta comment. It's a meta nature thing about it. So if you can see that when the big twist happens and Andrew Ryan tells you you're a slave, the game itself has just told you, by the nature of being a gamer, you're blindly following instructions every time you load up a game. And you're doing that in this game too, but they're slapping it in your face almost. It's so great in that sense.
Yeah, it kind of brings up this I don't know. The first time I played it, it brought up this instant flashback to every moment in the game, and every moment in every game that I played before that, where it's I am only doing what this game tells me to do. This entire time, and it's something that while you are aware that you're doing it,
you don't
while you're
think
playing
about
the game,
it
it's
often.
not something that you think about while you're playing
course.
any given game, especially Bioshock, until that happens.
So they tell you it.
I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but
Yes,
long
you do.
before I'm totally tooting my own horn. But long before I played Bioshock, I thought it ridiculous. Was the narrative dissonance when you're why is my character doing this when there's other solutions that could be done? I overanalyze everything in my life.
Sure.
So when I saw that reveal, I thought it was a clever twist, but it wasn't a
Revelation.
oh my god, I'm a slave. I'm quite aware of my change by the limits of this
Medium.
It's almost the same way. It's almost as if I'm getting angry at a character on a movie for choosing these things because this is the story they're wanting to tell.
All right.
But you're supposed to have agency in a game, and that's why the game
Some kind of,
is trying to, any game worth its salt is trying to trick you into believing that you have agency.
But I never believed that. I always understood that
it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. The whole point of a video game is
to give
that you believe that you are pushing the action, which to an extent you are, because as soon as you turn off the game, there's no more action. Whereas if you walk away from a movie, it's still going. But if you walk away from a game, it's not still going,
Unless
that's a quantum mechanical thing. Whatever. Go ahead. What else did you want to say?
I thought the much better theme was the whole political commentary that had in there. I thought
Consumerism.
Consumerism, the kind of libertarian philosophy done to the extreme, and a lot of the side characters have sins they're atoning for.
They embody something,
Yes.
one thing or another.
And I always loved that aspect more so than the twists that
All
people
right,
tend to
that's
rave
interesting.
about.
We'll explore that
Yes.
soon. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, this was the first game I played that had a really strong story. So I got the story and I was kind of not unaffected by it, but I just kind of watched it like you were watching a film. And then when I played it again, I had already played through several games. So that's when the meta aspect came to me, and I was just like, that's really freaking clever. And then, to your point, Mr. Completionist, you want to talk about being a slave, whether you were immersive or not, the fact that you were because you've said before you're a completionist,
he
that you got to do everything else. So
I'm happy in my chains.
Yeah, exactly.
The great chain Ian loves to be in. Sure. But so here's the thing. I'm going to speak to something you just said. Even though everything I just said myself previously, it actually did not, I didn't, yes, I completed Bioshock. I was like, that was a really great game. It wasn't until a bit later that I thought of more about, holy shit, the game literally told me that I am a slave, and by the nature of being a gamer, they slapped it in my face in, the best, an amazing way. And I guess the point I'm getting at is that you cannot do that with a movie and a book. Like, it's difficult to do. They found a way to like comment upon the nature of this hobby within the hobby itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. To the point, though, someone did make that comment long before.
Yes, but
in Wayne's World.
Okay,
when he's talking about the kid just feeding quarters into.
That's funny.
And that kind of like growing up on arcade style. I understand that I'm giving money to this machine in order to progress a little bit farther in this set track to show that my reflexes are better than the next man's reflexes.
But that's not. I get what you're saying, but it's not quite what Bioshock.
But in a game, the mechanism, the media, or what the actual art can speak literally directly to you without breaking the fourth wall, because you are in that game. Like, you are that character is your avatar, whereas in a movie, nothing on screen is your avatar.
There's nothing equal to that. That's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
In a game, get out of here. Yeah, whatever. There's some. Of course, there's always something else. But like, as far as movies go, as far as books go, as far as other mediums go, you are not like. Let me put it this way: games are almost exclusively done in the second person, right? Whereas in any other medium, that's not the way to do things, And yes, there have been books written in second person where like the person, like the narrator's talking directly to you. But in a game, you are that character. That is
you're supposed to be.
That character is an extension of yourself, if they're done well. Right.
When I played Bioshock for the second time, it was to warm up for Bioshock 2, and by that time I had played several, like Red Dead Redemption, and it's really funny because I started learning, like, okay, I'm playing a movie, I am playing a book, I'm playing a graphic novel.
So to get the nuances.
Right. So the second time I played Bioshock, it's like I got the jokes, which is funny because right after that I played Bioshock 2. And you're just kind of, after playing all these games, you're like, you're wasting my time. I mean, you can, but that's the whole thing we were talking about, like having an immersive experience. A lot of games you feel like you're playing as opposed to being in the book, being in the movie, being that person. I think that's what you're saying, but I think that's what differentiates things like Bioshock from Bioshock 2, and why Infinite, they took it to the next level, and Burial at Sea, I think they even took it another step.
Sure.
When I was young, I was a huge fan of Choose Your Own Adventure novels.
I knew someone was going to bring up the goddamn Choose Your Own Adventure.
But we always do.
But they're, in a sense, my agency of choosing whether my character goes to page 8 or goes to page 72 is no different than choosing whether in Infinite Elizabeth takes the cage or the bird or whatever. Pendant. The concept.
It's still rails.
I'm even when there is the illusion of choice, I understand what it is. It's an illusion, and I'm gonna I have fun with it. So that, again, but I never think that anything I do is not predetermined. If I find something that's not predetermined, I found a bug in the game. Right. So, I broke it.
A man finds a bug.
Well, because even if you have like an open world stuff, like the Bethesda games, I mean, even there's still that illusion. You think like, oh, I've got all these choices. You got more choices, but you only have a finite amount. So no matter what game you're going to play, you're going to have that.
Understand that.
It's the same thing in life, though, too. But regardless of that,
that's fine.
Way to be fatal.
Well, wait, it's reality. Is going to say? Go ahead.
What I was going to say was that even though here's the way that I think of Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Go on, please.
I think they are computer text-based games. That's basically what they are. So I see those as games more than novels or books or whatever. Yes, they're in the form of books, but they're games. It's you have choices, you make those choices, and then you go through whatever it is. A novel I see as a linear story path, and not that there's anything. They're two different genres, two different media. I think, like two different mediums. I think.
Sure.
Anyway, sorry.
Okay. But even in Choose Your Own Adventure novels, there's only maybe 2 endings besides death.
Perhaps, yeah.
There could be a million endings. It doesn't matter how many endings there are. But
That's
there's
true in a
still
game
only a
too. If
finite
you don't
amount of
complete a
endings.
level, you're
Makes
dead.
sense.
But
So the idea is that we're making all these choices, but in the end, there was only
one
in the
choice.
end, you're still a slave to the gods that are creating you,
and
whether
that's
it's the author or the developer.
It's the same thing in life, man.
You're a slave, Stephen.
Yeah, we're all slaves.
You're all a slave, of course. You're all parasites. That's what I'm going to say. Sort of. Yes, everything you said is true, both you guys. But that's what I'm going to like. It's sort of like self-fulfilling prophecy. That's if you understand that and can see that in this game. It was the pinnacle of highlighting that, of showing you that outright. And also, you get an experience of it. Like you're both within and without. Yes, you're a slave, but also like you know that going into it. So it just told you that anyways in a narratively an amazing reveal and / twist through their characters.
May I bring this to another level?
No, you may not. Yes, of course.
The idea is that reveal is effective once.
Yes, of course, that's true.
If we're going to talk about the timelessness of this game, I really think, and I made this point before, it's the other aspects that's dealing with the social commentary that's bringing up.
That's more broad. Yeah, it doesn't rely on the jump scare almost.
Yeah, the nuances you can see throughout the entire series. Whether you're dealing with, in a sense, the original Bioshock, which deals with libertarian, or whether you're dealing with Infinite, which deals with Americana and kind of that conservative, like 50s sentimentality, then those are the kind of things that I can go through and play this over and over again and really enjoy the little hints and jokes they make throughout.
So you just really quickly, you toss the reveal away as like a thing that you can only do once, but let me just say, in my mind, it's more Usual Suspects than Sixth Sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say.
So, like, I can watch Usual Suspects again and enjoy it, but Sixth Sense was the movie that I could only watch once, and the second time I saw it, it was a piece of shit.
I agree with you. What I think, because when I play Bioshock again, or when I watch a movie again, like, if a movie is great, if a game is great, I'm still going to get that, when the reveal happens. I'm still going to get like this shivers, like, oh my God, that's so cool. It's amazing. It's so great to me that somebody put that down. It's like, I'm still affected. There are some movies like, the Nolan Batman movies, or when you get to the end of a movie, I'm still viscerally affected by that, no matter how many times I see it. So by the same token, whether I'm playing Bioshock or we're talking about it, and Scott and I talk about it quite a bit, it's still like one of those things where you're in awe of it because
I just get to throw random quotes in people's faces in
real
life.
But but the fact that like, okay, it's no longer a twist because you know what the twist is, but it's like enjoying, like Steve said, it's like going back and enjoying. You can enjoy it, and you're like, this is a really cool thing.
To go back to Steve's point for a moment, how dare you besmirch the great visionary director M. Night Shyamalan?
Fuck up.
My favorite movie of his was Unbreakable. That to me is the only one that stands up to repeat viewing.
I agree.
Forget about him for a second. Like, I want to go back to something you said. Yes, I don't want to say, excuse me, it's a one-trick pony. Of course, you can only like get the visceral thing out of it once. But as Steve said, I'm basically going to rephrase that and agree with it. Once you intellectually understand it, you can almost go back, like, we all did this. When we replayed it just now, we all, at least I did it myself, I tried to count how many times Atlas says, would you kindly, before the reveal happens. Right? It's like, you can get little details like that out of it. And Infinite has things like that, too. So all I'm saying is, like, yes, you can only be, like, have the carpet pull out from you one time in that sense. But once you understand what it's saying, you're like, oh, here he's about to tell me I'm a slave, but I'm playing this game again anyway, so of course I'm a slave. Like,
that's like going back to the Sixth Sense and trying to see where he doesn't interact.
Where he doesn't.
Yeah, but it completely breaks. Like completely falls apart. There.
Fine.
I said that on purpose.
But I'm gonna. Son of a bitch. She's trying to derail us, but I'm going to be a man and choose to talk about this real quick.
But I was much more interested in seeing the interactions between Andrew Ryan and all the other, like, Dr. Langford,
Julie Langford,
who is completely contemptuous of Andrew Ryan's. And you have the racist Suchong representation of him.
Well, it's a racist portrayal. He himself is a racist.
They had the balls to have a Tenenbaum, who was basically worked for Nazi scientists.
That's a character to have.
And
to actually make her like a quasi good guy.
Kind of. Well, she has an arc off screen. By the time you get there, she had her life changing moment.
And following the lives of all these people, like I forget the guy's name, but he was the caretaker for Andrew Ryan. Seeing
Bill McDonald,
seeing his arc develop throughout, seeing all like the politics of
it's all told
the concept
well,
of Andrew Ryan and Frank Fontaine being in a sense the same person at different levels of society.
Two sides of the same fucking coin,
and all of that was so much more interesting to me than counting
that.
Would you kindly?
Fair enough. Like so, I'm gonna like. That's why it's so good. I think like perhaps that's one of the things, maybe a major reason we can say it's both. You can appreciate it. You can like, oh, here comes the twist, but also you can still get the subtle like the commentary, all the speeches that he gives you, that the Randian kind of speeches that he's portraying an extremist caricature of an ideology.
Well, first of all, getting back to you, I did notice the first time he says, "Would you kindly?" and he says it.
It's
like,
early
right
and
away.
often. I know it's the first fucking thing he says.
Right. But I was gonna say about the off-screen character arcs. Back to what I was saying about Mad Max. We were talking about Fury. Is you got a semi-silent protagonist, but all these other stories are being told, and they look like they're window dressing, but really they're not. And one of the things I thought was really cool, I forgot about this, when you go into the bar, and you go up and you'd hear this woman who is like looking for her daughter, and you go there and she's dead on the bed, and she's just like, you play a recording, it's like, I saw my daughter, and
we saw Misha, I think is her name, or Mishka, or whatever her name is.
Mishka, and it was just like it's like a really haunting little vignette. It's
a dark moment, but it tells you what happened.
Yeah, but it's part of the overall world. It's part of the overall story. It's
a tapestry. It's the
tapestry.
Of Bioshock.
Actually, kind of to go back on my point a little bit, or more to.
I cannot believe you're telling me you're a hypocrite.
Actually, the first thing you see in the game is "Would you kindly," which is on the card in the airplane.
Yes, if you notice that though, you might miss it at first.
I thought it was very well paced because it takes you a while between seeing that initial "Would you kindly" and hearing it for the first time.
That's true.
So it's not suspicious in your mind. You
don't put it together immediately.
Yes, and nor would you, because now you're invested in the story. Right. So I thought, again, I don't think it's necessarily the strongest part of the narrative, but I thought that they paced it very well. That you never got suspicious of the "Would you kindly" until the reveal happens, and you're like, oh yeah, that's been throughout the game.
I just want to mention something real quick. Another thing I noticed, I remember it in earlier playthroughs, but I was looking, again, I was doing this, I was nitpicking as a Parasite would in the latest playthrough. There was right when you get to Arcadia, so that you have the flashes of your memories, like it's the picture of like it's almost like the American Gothic, like the family and the farm thing.
He did quotes around memories, you guys.
Right when you get to Arcadia, you get a flash of like the memory in quotes again of the farm. They were strategically placed where like the flashback happens to you on screen, but where it happens is very smartly done. Like it's not like random. Like it makes sense for what's happening and for like what image you see. So I like that. It's even better than I mean.
These certain places remind you of these memories that have been implanted into you, right?
Of course.
So, like, you equate the memory of the farm with the farmer's market and that type of thing.
I just wanted to mention that real quick. Go on.
Speaking of nitpicks, this is one of my... It's just bothered me every single time I play this game.
What is it?
Happens right at the beginning. And I think they cut out an audio dialogue piece that they intended to be in there.
Yeah.
Because when you get your first plasmid, he doesn't tell you to get that plasmid, and he doesn't mention it. All you do is you walk up this thing and stick it in your arm.
You do it, and then he talks to you.
And then he talks to you. I think there was supposed to be like a trigger for "Would you kindly go up?" And I don't think I think they just like the trigger never executed or whatever, because it never. I'm like, why did I just walk up to this thing and just stab this in my arm?
Oh, because I'm a heroin addict. That's what I got out of it. But, you're right. It's funny in that sense. It's odd a little bit there. Yeah.
From every single time I played this, that like
fair enough
bothered me. So.
But that could actually speak to your programming, like the memory flashes you're having.
Yeah, it's a comment unto itself. You see a thing in a game flashing like highlighted gold. Oh, I'm gonna go touch that thing and do it.
No, you're reading into things now. For
I don't know.
For nostalgia's sake.
I don't know. I didn't notice that, but now thinking about it, it does kind of. If you're looking at it in game,
it's a little narrative dissonance, kind of.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point, maybe, perhaps, is all I'm saying.
It doesn't fit with how well structured everything is.
Everything
so
else
I think there is.
You're right.
If you went and like took apart the code, I imagine there's an audio file that just
trigger wasn't there. It's off or something.
Or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Or they didn't put it in for whatever reason.
Yes.
Like
yeah.
But it just.
I agree. Like now that I think about it, I think that's
That's fair.
A missed opportunity
That's
for
fair.
a little story.
That's fair.
But it just stick it right in your
yeah,
eye.
right. I mean, it's funny and it's a valid point. Like, it is a little jarring. Like, it doesn't quite match up. I get what you're saying. So I'll just bring up two things. One thing I want to say earlier. I never played System Shock 2, but apparently, like, people accuse Bioshock of, like, basically plagiarizing themselves because Ken Levine and his team, Irrational, did System Shock 2, which was a PC game, like, late 90s, probably right around Half-Life 2 or so, in which the twist/reveal of the antagonist was very close to Bioshock's, but I never played it. But all I'm saying is they were accused of ripping themselves off in a certain sense of that way. So, but I can't speak to that because I never played it. I just heard about that. And I read it later, like years later, about it. Good. But I wanted to bring another thing up. Like, again, it's sort of filtered through everything else you guys just said. In that, in order to get the most out of it, it requires you having to like invest enough time in video gaming as a hobby itself. Otherwise, like on the surface, like if you're just some random person, like I'll play this first-person shooter, like you'll get it probably. You might not get, but you're not going to get the layers that they're going for.
See, to that point though. I think it works for people on all different layers. You have the casual gamers who would enjoy it for its mechanics and for its battle system and for. And I thought Survivor mode was very well done for people who like a challenge with the game. Although the challenge kind of fell apart halfway through.
Right.
You have the people who enjoy political discussions, and they really
social commentary.
Yeah, they really discuss.
I agree they do that well. I think we all agree on that.
You have. The people who will look into other things like the Christianity point and see things and deeper meaning which don't actually exist. And then you have...
so you say.
So I say. If a man says it, is it not true? And then you have the shout out to the gamers there. So I think that you don't need to know every single aspect to appreciate it all.
Aren't there like places you find where there's like crucifixes,
yes,
and so
Bibles
forth.
And Bible smoking. We talked about that.
So, but
okay, go on.
I just want to find out as a point before I make another point. Have you played Burial at Sea yet, or do you know that
he hasn't gotten to it yet? So we'll talk about that later. Go ahead.
But to the point on the crucifixes, a lot of people bring this up to me, where it's saying, "Oh, there's like crucifixes and Bibles scattered around." Yes, but in the same scenes, it's contraband along with Hollywood movies, and no one is claiming that this is a in a sense like a McCarthyian.
Right.
I claim that.
Like this is a huge.
I'm claiming it now.
This is a rabbit hole, but you're right about that. Like it's a valid point.
I wanted to bring up this point to this Christianity thing. There's when you go to the boss battle with Dr. Steinman, okay, he's talking about Aphrodite the entire time and trying to do the perfect human form. And when you go into it, you see the three bodies on the tables almost crucified. Yeah. Well, then there's the three bodies crucified, just like Jesus and the two thieves. What is the deeper meaning? I can't, for the life of me, besides just having imagery for the sake of imagery, what is the deeper meaning to Steinman?
Steinman, no, but the religious imagery. When you listen to Ryan's announcements, it's like he knows that there's religion he knows there's a religion there, and he's trying to stamp it out. So like listening to a lot of what he says, or like these propaganda messages, I just found it really interesting when you'd find religious artifacts and then hear what Ryan was saying.
Even in the Book of Lies, sometimes you can find truth.
Exactly.
But that didn't answer my question. What is the meaning behind Steinman's three crucified bodies there? And if no one can answer, I'm going to claim this as a one on my side.
Well, it could be that Steinman was secretly one of the religious underground.
It could be anything. You're right.
But he doesn't mention it. It's Aphrodite all the way. This is one of those things that bothered me. Like what is the point of this?
Allow me to address a bit of it real quickly, and then I'll let you talk. Like there's another very famous, like it's an image that I had on my fucking desktop for a long time, where right when you go up to Neptune's Wharf, or like whatever the wharf area is, the second you step out of the bathysphere, there's a dude crucified. And it says smuggler. He's on a fucking cross in a crucified position. He's not actually nailed to it. He's tied up and like hung and stuff. There's a noose around his neck. It says smuggler. Yes, that's a in quotes, a religious image. But what is the deeper meaning beyond it? Nothing. It's just to have a shocking image, sort of. Is
actually,
what you're saying.
Well, I was thinking that like when it said smuggler, like that with the crucified, I was thinking like this is what we do with the Bible smugglers. This is what we do.
That's
anybody.
That's what you do to a criminal in ancient Rome, or like
what smuggler actually means in terms of
to completely come up with an answer for your question out of the depths of my
The
ass.
depths of the ocean in the Rapture. Yes, go on.
He was a plastic surgeon, and perhaps being obsessed with coming up with the perfect version of anything that he's trying to do, make it
Aesthetics or a moral imperative.
right? Which is aesthetics or a moral imperative is something that's plastered on the floor in
blood.
his thing, and imagery for the sake of imagery might be important to him as a character because aesthetics are a moral imperative, and that vision,
image, the
that
aesthetic.
vision is his,
I like that. That's
is
really
his
awesome.
grand vision of a perfect aesthetic vision.
That's Waldo-esque, man.
Fair enough. Yes, we can go down a rabbit hole, surely, but I think you both made a nice little counterbalance to each other there, and that was amusing. I think you both have somewhat of a point to an extent.
You've amused me.
Yes.
Go on.
Thank you for amusing me, you parasites, of course. But yeah, I just everything we said broadly, I think, is why it stands out so much, both narratively and perfectly fine, solidly. You got the RPG elements, and that was all fine. It's all great, like even the upgrades.
Gameplay, visual,
Yeah.
the audio in this game is
Yes,
terrific
okay,
as well.
you're right.
Amazing.
That's the point I was going to bring up. Probably my final things. The voice acting and who they got to do it is like fucking top notch. It creates the atmosphere.
Not only that, the atmospheric music and the
Yeah,
and the
it's
sounds
all-
of like
it all goes
the
into-
splicers, which Chris mentioned earlier, like everything that they did orally
Yeah.
with an A
Sure.
was top notch.
Yeah.
Fucking
Agreed.
awesome in this
Agreed.
game.
That's all I'm going to say.
Actually, I do have a point, since you said that was
you have
last
a
of
point?
yours.
Good.
No, I actually have a question,
Go.
more so than a point. What do you think of Frank Fontaine as a villain? Because I thought as Atlas he was very effective, but once the reveal comes that he's Frank Fontaine, I thought it kind of...
Fell apart a little.
Yes.
I will somewhat agree with you that it's weaker. Once he starts talking to you as Frank Fontaine, he's not as he becomes more mustache trolling is probably what you want to say. And yeah, I think that's true.
Andrew Ryan was by far the best antagonist in this game, right? And like he died not early, but like
60% through, I'll say.
much earlier
Something
than
like that.
Fontaine, who was just, he was just the badass boss at the end that you had to beat. Like, that was pretty much it. Whereas Andrew Ryan was the one that really drove the entire plot.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Traditionally, they set you up. You thought you were going to go and have almost a boss fight with Ryan, but no, it's entirely a cutscene. It's the reveal of the plot, and he, again, because you're a slave, he chooses to die. A man chooses to be killed by his own slave, and that's the whole point. And you're like, there's no gameplay at all. It's just a cutscene.
To go to the point is that I think Bioshock is incredibly well paced.
Yes.
And it gives you varied tasks. Only, I believe, in Hephaestus did I feel that I was starting to get bogged down with a chase quest. But throughout most of it, I felt very, like, I was continually doing new
fresh.
things.
Yeah.
Like, and eventually, assembling the Big Daddy suit at the end was very effective. I was excited to see what that would be like. And then you have to... They could have... I think in Bioshock 2, they took the whole thing with you taking care of the little sisters.
Yes.
But in this...
It was a mechanic.
At the very end of the game, having to take care of the little sister, that added a new, fresh... I mean, they kept adding new things.
Right.
To
it was a wave battle, but because it was that... Yeah, sure.
and that kept... Because, I think again, now that the more I think about it, for the first half, Bioshock has fantastic narrative. And the second half is carried by its gameplay as the narrative starts to slow down. Because again, Frank Fontaine wasn't all that. Like, I felt like his master plan was to kill Andrew Ryan and then had no plan after that.
No, he's going to run Rapture tits to toe. Okay. Sure.
All right, I'm going to get all the Adam. And I felt that it was a very poor final boss battle. I thought they could have
He
done
just went
a little
Super
bit-
Shredder.
It was a
on us.
traditional one. Good.
Yeah, Super Shredder is perfect for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
I was thinking about what you said, and I agree with you about Fontaine. Because this immediately reminded me of Far Cry 3. Because who you think's the main antagonist, you even kill earlier than Ryan does in this. When you compare apples to apples and
Lengthwise, yeah. Percentage-wise, if
but
you will.
the payoff. But you're right. The payoff in Bioshock is a mechanical boss fight. The payoff in Far Cry is a moral decision.
Sure.
Which
Fair
I
enough.
yeah.
Well, real quickly, we talked about this. I'll touch briefly on it. The moral decisions, of course, in Bioshock is whether or not to rescue the little sisters,
Right.
which directly feeds into gameplay mechanics. So you can kind of that's another good thing they
But
did.
it's never
Oh
a
man,
choice.
it's a whole other.
Well, by pure numbers,
it was
it's not.
better.
That's true, but you don't necessarily know that. Is all I'm saying. But I was going to wrap up with this. Like, it's almost like, yeah, you have a traditional boss fight because that's what you're expecting. Like, you can take it as if they're subverting, your expectations about that even, maybe. But here's what I'm going to say. They could have, if it was like maybe a lesser game and an earlier game, the ending could have been the cutscene with Ryan, and boom, like, then the game ends, and right then they could have cut it off, like, oh, fuck you, you're a slave, and credits. But, I agree with you what you just said. Yes, they give you more gameplay afterwards. The narrative sort of slows down a bit. It's not as... It's okay still, but of course, like, what are you going to follow that up with after that point?
Well, to go into the over-analysis for a bit, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Frank Fontaine represents Ken Levine, in that he had a master plan up until Ryan.
And then didn't know what to do.
Had no idea what to do afterwards.
That's funny. We'll have to talk to him about it, but...
We'll get him on the show.
Yeah, go on. Good.
Talk to Ken. Somebody get Ken on the horn.
Kenny?
I'm working on it right now.
Have you finished Infinite yet?
I'm almost done with it.
Okay.
We're going to do a follow-up.
Oh, yeah, because I'm trying to figure out which examples to use. But
Bioshock ones. Go.
But the thing about Bioshock is you place it
Things from Bioshock.
You place it historically in games. Now games have the audacity to end on the narrative instead of the action. I'm like,
but there's always that final boss fight.
No, not true. Not true. Not even in what the hell is that called? The Bethesda game. That takes place in steampunk England. Dishonored. Yeah. In Dishonored, they don't really end with the boss fight. I mean, there's
but you are. I guarantee. I never finished Dishonored, but I 100% guarantee you there's a big boss fight, and then some narrative happens, and then the game's over.
Not quite.
Right?
No.
There's no boss fight at the end.
No, but you actually make a good point there that I am viewing it not within the context of when it was made. And I think that there are different...
That's important.
And that's actually a huge flaw on my part. So I will forgive it a lot.
It's a consequence of having it than the time gap, really. Like,
being the bridge from games this is what you expected to this is what you can do.
What got me thinking about the historical context is watching the new Doctor Who versus the old Doctor Who, and it was so landmark. And you look at it, hold on a second, and you look at it now, and you're like, the storytelling they were doing, despite the limited budget and the effects, the stories they were telling back then were so far ahead of their time.
Sure.
In the same way, you really have to put Bioshock in that context because they fell on some tropes at the time, but everything else was elevated. The way the story was told, the way the people you never even saw that you just heard the recording, the way their stories were told, even if the last third or whatever is more conventional. Shooter, boss fight, and everything.
It just loses a little bit of steam. But
you put it in context, and the game is really ahead of its time in so many ways.
I will agree with you because playing Infinite now, I can see what they would have if they made Bioshock now. What it would have been like.
Yeah.
So, and I would be actually excited to see them kind of not only do like a remaster of Bioshock, but kind of a
director's cut or something.
Yeah, like a director's
or
cut.
make a new sequel to Bioshock or something.
Yeah, but I think with the themes that they had then mixed with what they're allowed to do now would be very interesting to see. It's a fantasy, of course, but it would be.
It's all recursive because Bioshock allowed the things that you're able to do in games now. I think,
absolutely,
sure.
Every add-on I want to make is to stuff you haven't played yet, so we definitely have to do a follow. We definitely have to do a follow-up.
Sure, and we will. But I think we've discussed it at length enough for now and laid out our reasons why it still stands the test of time, both narratively and just as, it holds its place within, as you said, I think you said something very good, it has its own special place sort of within games, occupies a very special, position that people can point to it and say, here is something that was almost literally a game changer, and perhaps things that came after it aspired to it, tried to take as we said earlier, bits and pieces from it and try to, sort of recapture the feeling and spirit of what could be done, of what that game did within its own medium and how effective it was. So I think we covered a lot of quite good ground here, gentlemen. I think we all laid out our opinions, so I think it's time to take a bathysphere out back into the back to the surface here. So, as the ending thought I have for you is, would you kindly tell your friends to check out our episode? And good night.
All right, you guys have a good one.
All right, why are none of the plasmids practical for everyday use?
Oh, we're not done?
That's it.
That's it.
Some of them are. Tell us which ones are
The
why.
bees. What practical use do bees have?
Not the bees.
I'll take any plasmid in normal.
I'll take
everyday life.
plasmids over no
I can
plasmid.
find a use for them. So
Injecting plasmids as we speak.
Yes. Make sure, my final thought as
Scott's got 6 needles in
as
his
we sign
arm.
off, make sure you inject yourself with every needle you find lying around anywhere. Good night.
good night.
This has been Syntax Error. Thank you as always for listening, and we will see you next time.
Music by Stephen Ormosi. Editing and engineering by Scott Thurlow.
Syntax Error is part of a Lost Signals Productions. All rights reserved.